Hello again. I guess we're going to have to talk about getting a Jazz Fest headliner for our next Axios event. For our final interview this morning, I'm excited to zoom out and examine the state of Louisiana's economy and business environment. So please help me welcome to the stage Louisiana Economic Development Secretary Susan Bourgeois. Welcome. Come on.
Thanks, Chelsea. Thank you.
No Jazz Fest headliner, but we'll be pretty fun.
Can we talk about Jazz Fest for a while more?
Sure.
That's good.
Did you? What was your show? What'd you see?
I hate to see it, but I didn't go this year. There are just a number of things.
You brought this up.
You know, I'm one of those New Orleanians. Any of you from there might know this. You're either one of those people who did it your entire life and now you don't do it anymore, or you did it your entire life and therefore you keep doing it your entire life. So you can guess which category I'm in.
You're the too many people go, so I don't go anymore.
Yes. I will date myself and then I'll stop about this. I'm so old that I saw Run DMC front stage at the Jazz Fest when there were like 6,000 people there. So,
and
yeah.
You've gotten the street cred back.
That's right. I mean, Run DMC.
So, Secretary, sorry, vibe shift, but yes. A few months ago, when you'd been in this role for about a year, your team put together a document outlining a strategic plan. It's basically a SWOT analysis for the state business, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. 40 or so pages, so just instead of rehearsing or bringing all 40 of those pages up, what is the single biggest strength that you see for Louisiana business?
You know, gosh, to say the single biggest strength is actually that we don't just have one. We have a few that we lump together in that single. First and foremost, you know, you cannot deny Louisiana's history, our legacy in process industries, our legacy in the petrochemical industry, all very much based on what we're looking at here in the Mississippi River and what that adds from a logistics perspective. But our infrastructure and our legacy in so much of the energy space really incredibly well positions us for a future in it as well. By infrastructure, I don't just mean facilities, and I don't just mean ports, and I don't just mean rail. I mean a workforce that's worked in it generationally, right? It's schools, institutions that have built entire academic programs around the industry. So it really is that infrastructure built around the legacy of the energy industry in Louisiana. Single biggest strength as it relates to all things energy. But the irony is that if you really look at what energy means today versus what energy meant maybe 30, 40 years ago, Louisiana's position in that space is really unmatched, right? If you look at our pipeline infrastructure, if you look at what's happening in Haynesville, if you look at our electric providers and our ability to continue to add capacity to generation capacity. So all things energy, that everything that makes that up has really become the standout strength.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that infrastructure piece for sure in this conversation. So on the flip side of the strength, growth area.
You know, growth area, there's some specific ones, but there's a general one that the plan identified very early on, but ironically, it's one of the biggest reasons that I accepted this role as Secretary of Economic Development for Louisiana. And it's a narrative change. We in Louisiana, you know, the folks in the audience who are from here will understand this better than most. We in Louisiana have a habit, if you will, a behavior of repeating a negative narrative that defines us incorrectly, first of all. But we sort of perpetuate a narrative, and changing the narrative around the Louisiana opportunity is both a weakness, right? It is sort of that institutional weakness, but it also wraps itself back into an incredible opportunity because of all the things I said to your first point and that the plan identified about the strengths. All those things are real, they're here, they're concrete, they exist, they're documentable. The narrative around what the opportunity is here is probably our biggest weakness.
And I'm glad you brought that up. You've talked a lot about the narrative change over the last many months. To achieve this big generation shift kind of growth that you want to, that you say you want to bring to Louisiana, you do have to change that mind shift, right? Mindset. So, how do you do that? I mean, this is a state that Carly and I joke a little bit whenever we have new data that comes in. I'm like, oh great, something else that makes us look bad. So how do we change that?
So I think we change it both in reality and we change it in our storytelling, right? So one of the things, you have to change your fundamentals. At the end of the day, we can't keep having education outcomes that rank low and then keep trying to convince everyone we don't. Well, in fact, we don't. Louisiana has moved up to being number 16 in the country for reading scores for fourth graders. Not moved up 16 places. We have moved up to number 16. We have seen the fastest growth in our reading scores in fourth graders. That is a story. There's both meat to it and there's a story to tell there, right? So we have to move two things simultaneously. We have to move the fundamentals and we have to tell the story of the fundamentals, right? We had a tax session in November where in 2 weeks' time we moved the Louisiana tax code further than we have in 40 years. We moved up 13 rankings in business-friendly tax environment in Louisiana. And so those things are real, those are tangible, and there has to be a story told that matches that. And that's where I challenge everyone, be it journalists, be it us inside of our department, be it the legislature, be it the governor, be it every cabinet secretary who shares a role with me, and be it everyone in Louisiana. The story that needs to be told is of the strengths and the opportunities, and that's what I would hope we do a better job, the cumulative we do a better job at that.
So I'll hand you one to that.
Great.
To that point. The strategic plan notes that Louisiana ranks number 1 for capital investment per capita. I was surprised by that.
Yep.
We like good.
Yep.
But we do lag in job growth and income gains. So what is the key to connecting those things and creating real improvements for workers?
So a lot of it is what we incentivize and what we focus on both at the department and also in our public policy. As we speak, the legislature I think we have 7 or 8 more days left of this session where we're creating an incentive that's based around wage growth and not around job count, right? Historically, the value of projects and wins has been weighed and measured on the number of jobs, but really incentivizing wage growth to make sure that every Louisianian has the opportunity for proud and growing wages. And so some of it's public policy around incentivizing that. And a lot of it is creating the opportunity, right? It is about having the announcements like we've had. It is about, shameless plug, but it is about Meta choosing North Louisiana, a rural parish in North Louisiana, as the location to build its largest ever AI data center in the world, right? It is about Hyundai's investment right here, just a few miles from here in Ascension Parish, making a decision to build its first ever US-based clean steel mill in this area. The numbers of jobs, the kinds of jobs, they're different sectors, they're different parts of the state. So it's both creating the opportunity, but also creating public policy to match that. I say in every speech I give, capital flows where it's treated the best. And so we have to create a culture politically, policy, business-wise, on every level, certainly inside of our department, but on every level where capital can flow where it's treated the best.
So I promise we'll talk about other things besides the plan, but I have one last question for you on it. It lists 7 priority sectors: energy and process industries, logistics, aerospace and defense, professional services, life sciences, and tech.
Yes.
Which has the biggest upside for the state?
I think, gosh, that's a hard one because they're actually not ranked in a priority order. They're ranked based on where our expertise lies, where our infrastructure lies, and where our workforce lies. I would say energy and process industries probably has the biggest upside in the short run. But the other interesting piece for it, it doesn't list it as a sector, and we intentionally did this. There's a whole other section of the plan that speaks to innovation, that innovation is the tool to enable the future proofing of the economy in those other sectors. So I would say the innovation overlay on every one of those 7 identified sectors is actually the biggest upside. Because if you take the infrastructure and the legacy and you sort of bolt on the new from a technology and an innovation perspective, that's where the real play is. And we've had several announcements even in that space.
Yeah, you took the other answer. Come on. I gave you a list of 7.
I didn't mean to get ahead of you.
It's okay. So what is a project outside of your control? I know we've talked a little bit about what's going on over downtown right now, but a project outside of your control that could make your job easier to sell the state?
Wow, that's a good question there. There are a lot of them. I will say the one that's outside of my control that has the most, I would say, direct impact on our as a department and our as a state's ultimate success is all things around workforce, right? A workforce challenge is not unique to Louisiana. That's every state in this country has an identified challenge in that respect. Ours is a little bit different in that, not to get too in the weeds on this, but our unemployment numbers are actually great. What our challenge is our employment participation rates, which means the people who are age available for the workforce, who are either working or seeking a job, those numbers are unacceptable by many standards. And so we have a real challenge in Louisiana to get people who currently don't see themselves as even able to or interested in participating in the workforce into the workforce. We have a really dynamic, great leader at our Louisiana Workforce Commission who's changing a lot of that. Our partners in higher ed, our partners in our two-year institutions, and our partners in K through 12 are all pulling on that rope together. But I would say if we, just like any state, have an Achilles, it's making sure we are training our people, upskilling our people, and getting our people in the workforce to make sure we can fill all these opportunities that our great department is out there creating.
What are some of the things that are exciting to you in that world that you're keeping an eye on?
I would say something I haven't seen before in Louisiana state government, which is the alignment of those agencies I just shared with you. You know, as in most politics, people tend to operate in silos, right? They operate in funding silos, they operate in priority silos. But we inside the department, and really this is driven by Governor Landry, has insisted on a whole of government approach to the work that we do, not to leave it within any particular silo. And I would say that the best, most optimistic piece of all of this is the way that our K through 12 system, our higher ed system, our community and college system, our Louisiana Workforce Commission, and we as LED are working together to identify the priority sectors, to drive the systems that way, to work with industry. So I haven't seen that kind of intentional coordination, collaboration, and alignment in Louisiana government ever.
One of the things, Secretary, that you mentioned was the Hyundai Steel announcement. That was the announcement that Governor Landry introduced at the White House. That will, I read last week, it will involve about $600 million in taxpayer-funded site preparation for the Riverplex Mega Park in Ascension Parish. So how do you justify the spend?
Yeah, some of what you read wasn't exactly accurate, but that's a whole different interview.
It wasn't my interview.
It was
not
your
interview. Say it out loud. I'm going to say that part out loud.
But what I will share, and it's actually what I'm incredibly proud of about this deal, we looked at this deal and we treated it completely different than historic economic development, where incentives to win and land these kind of deals typically go to the company. That's how, right, it's done. The absolute vast majority of the state investment to win the Hyundai deal is going into the state. It's going into roads, it's going into rail, it's going into overpasses, it's going into an entire brand new training facility that will be owned by and run by our LCTCS system. So all the public dollars that we are investing to be able to win the Hyundai project are actually investments in Louisiana that are facilitating the Hyundai project. The direct benefit to Hyundai at the end of the day is vastly different, the direct tax benefit or cash benefit, if you will. And even those benefits, ironically, are grants that they will get after they invest hard cost in Louisiana soil. So we actually framed this entire project, and we won this entire project because Louisiana invested in Louisiana, but we invested in things that enable Hyundai to produce here. So I'm very proud of the way we structured that deal, and frankly are using that philosophically the way we structure future deals, because it's just part of economic development that those kinds of projects require investments, and it's the right way to do it. And the return to the state will be vastly larger than any dollar for dollar investment we make. But the fact that we can also justify that and prove that out, if you will, in that the investment we're making in ourselves, it's in our people, it's in training our people, and it's in our land and in our roads. I think there's value for that all around.
So it sounds like you're saying that this kind of site development is something that you think Louisiana should be doing more of to bring in new business.
Absolutely. We know What we have seen, what this industry, and when I say industry, I mean economic development, but it is changing dramatically. And the one thing I have told our team, I've told the governor, and I've told the legislature, what is driving this right now more than anything is speed to market. Cost matters. Cost will always matter. Speed to market is as important as cost right now to people. And so Louisiana in the past has not done a good job of getting ahead of that, right? Investing in sites, investing in infrastructure that leads to the sites, getting a place ready to turn projects around. We are changing that. We as a department are changing that. I won't telegraph what I believe the legislature will do. We have 8 days left, but I believe they will make a commitment to a sites and infrastructure fund that both is real and sends a message to the world that Louisiana is getting ahead of that.
Okay. Since President Trump came into office and lifted the pause on LNG projects in short order, Louisiana is now on track to have more LNG export capacity, if my facts are correct, more than Qatar. Yep. We all know that Louisiana has access to natural resources. That's no surprise, but we've talked a little bit about infrastructure. What infrastructure does the state have that actually makes that kind of scale up so quickly possible?
Yeah, I think, Rick spoke a little bit about it on the previous session, but I think the undeniable asset we have in that space is really twofold. Number one is the Haynesville Shale and the access to abundant, right, natural gas. But the other piece that people can't wrap their heads around is that Louisiana today, without building another mile, has 50,000 miles of existing pipelines. 30,000 miles of that are natural gas pipelines. 50,000 miles of pipeline is enough to wrap the globe twice. And that's the pipeline infrastructure we already have. So our ability to, and then you couple that with our ability, because of our geological formation, our ability to sequester carbon. So if you look at the access to abundant and affordable natural gas, you look at our existing pipeline infrastructure, and you look at our ability to not only permit our own wells because of primacy, but our geology to make it doable, feasible, and affordable, there's not a place in this country that can compete with that.
Secretary, I know we're going to run out of time eventually here, so I'm going to speed through one of the other questions I had for you, which is, you mentioned a big focus at LED under your leadership is on innovation, but innovation, I think, doesn't necessarily have to be software. It doesn't have to be Silicon Valley. It can be, I invented how to make this glass cup faster and better than someone else. It doesn't have to be X, I guess. How are you thinking about that kind of innovation? What opportunities are you thinking in maybe the less software type space for the state?
Yeah, I think a great example of that is innovation in the energy space. It's New Lab's decision to site a facility here in New Orleans. And when the New Lab folks came to us and talked about why, because the first question I had for them is why here? What about this market? What about this ecosystem makes this your next logical market? It was really, in fact, the ecosystem itself is what the answer was. Because if you don't, you need to have research, and you need to have access to that. You need to have access to the actual building and the infrastructure where New Lab can locate. But there's a critical component to that, and this is where Louisiana really excels, is deployment. Right? If I'm an innovator, I'm a startup, or I'm a researcher, and I'm just somebody trying to develop a new smart valve to make a system, right, at an LNG plant more effective, more efficient. Think about the deployment, the ability to go test that at multiple places in multiple locations. So it's that speed to deployment piece that we also have here. And then if you also look at a business-friendly climate, you look at all the other pieces that we have, it's almost as though Louisiana is a petri dish for all things, right? We are a lab where we can try something, deploy it, bring it back, tweak it, fix it, and redeploy it, because we have all of those existing infrastructure assets. And that's a real win for us. And I think the innovation space is really going to be where we have the most upside. It's something we haven't paid a lot of attention to historically, and we have the most opportunity for growth there.
So before I let you go, yesterday you were here in town celebrating the economic impact of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Everyone can read those numbers online on Axios New Orleans. But what I'm going to ask, you mentioned that since Governor Landry took office, your pipeline is up 500%.
Yes.
What's in there?
A lot, yeah. Well, I can't tell you exactly what's in there. I can tell you a lot's in there. The up 500%, here's what it represents, and I get these updates every week. I'll get my new one tomorrow morning, so this is almost a week old. You know, I'm going to nerd out a little bit on you, right? But our internal to the department pipeline, which we call our AB pipeline, and that means a project is so serious that we have to work it multiple times a week. That's what considers it an AB pipeline. Our AB pipeline today has 201 projects in it. That's the up 500%. But here's the unbelievable piece. It represents about $205 billion of CapEx. 205 billion potential CapEx and upwards of 40,000 jobs. So if you just do simple math, and we get 10% of that, right? And 10% in economic development circles is a pretty safe number. Those numbers are unlike anything Louisiana has seen. And so it's both the upside and the opportunity and the potential, and it wraps back into the other piece I spoke to about our workforce, right? All the other things that we have to make sure are in place to be able to true up what we're promising in that regard. But the pipeline is tremendous, the opportunity is tremendous, and the diversity of the sectors represented and the diversity of the locations of where those things want to go it's a web.
Thank you. I have now taken you over time, so with that, we will have to leave it there, Secretary. Thanks again for joining us this morning, and thank you all for being here. Reminder to please subscribe to the Axios New Orleans newsletter and come find us and definitely Carly in the crowd. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.